So now that we have got our templates working pretty much correctly, and we have got like CSS and the styling and all that done, so then the next part is to move on to start working with the API and create the store in our Vue app where we can store the data that's downloaded from the API. So let's take a look at the API. So you go back to this real world app, and let's just take a look at all of these JSON stuff. Now, if you're making it in TypeScript, one of the things that we want to do is that you should have proper type definitions for the objects that we are going to download from the API. Now, let's just take a look at how this API stuff is working out. So if you go to like demo.realworld.io and you open your network tab and select the XHR requests, and say if you just refresh this here, you'll see that we get a articles API call, and inside the response we get all of these articles here. So this is this raw payload. Now there are a lot of websites which can online do a very beautiful thing is JSON to TypeScript. Okay, so there's like JSON to ts.com, and there are a couple of other, I think there's make types. So if I take this paste this JSON here and generate TypeScript, it creates this export interface author and article and root object and stuff like that. Make types also does like a similar thing. Like I paste this response here, I call it article response and generate. Generates this article response which contains the article entity and the author entity, right? So it's a good place to start generating your interfaces. You can just hand code all of that stuff, look at this and just define it on your own. But I think this is better. This is a better way of dealing with it. You just paste your JSON into make types and get the entities, or you put it into JSON.ts and get it. I think one of the places is that make types, I prefer it a little better because this stuff, like for example, there's this tag list and it shows that this tag list could be an array of null, and it puts the question mark here, which JSON to TS usually misses stuff like that. Okay, so it's better to use make types because it can handle the optional parameters better, because if you look at JSON to TS and if you look at the author object and the bio, it shows it as string, does not show it as undefined, but some of the authors may not have a bio. If you look at this API response, you will see that there is like some authors which have null as bio, and now make types can handle those data types as well. So I think that's pretty good. So what we're getting at is we will start creating something like this. We'll start create modules, and we'll have a module for users.ts, and we'll have a module for articles.ts. So users.ts, what we'll get at here is I'm gonna do import Vuex module and module from Vuex module decorators, and I'm gonna create a new module here. I'm gonna do add module to decorate it as module and export default class user module, or say users module, extends Vuex module. Okay, yeah. So now that we have like this, what I'll do is also add some dynamic parameters here. First of all, this is going to be a namespace module. I'll give this module a name, and I'll pass the store here. So I'll do import store from dot slash index, or I can do at slash store, right? And I'll pass the store into this. So this way I can generate a dynamic module, and I'll export this thing. Export. I'll just do this class user module. Export default get module uses module. Okay, so this is a new way of using Vuex modules, defining them like TypeScript classes. So I'll have two things inside users. I will have a user object, and I'll have a profile object. So the user is the current user, and like there's going to be a profile object, because I can visit, like if you go to this page, you'll see that you can visit the profile page of any other user as well. So that's like the profile request. When somebody makes a request to slash author, like this request, yeah, so if I make a request to profiles, I get this response in this format, profile. So if I take a look at the API, this is what a user looks like, and this is what a profile looks like. Okay, so yep, let's get to work. So profile is gonna look like this. Let's generate a profile object response. Get this interface for profile. I'm going to use this interface for profile. Sorry, copy this. Oh, I don't know why I'm not able to copy it. Copy to clipboard. Yep. So I just want this interface for profile, and I want like the bio might be non-existent and the image might not exist. Then I need an interface for this the user object. So there we go. User response. Okay, there we go. We can maybe put all of these into a separate folder as well. Let's say store maybe a new folder, data types, and can have oh, maybe I can remove this and let's have models.d.ts. okay, so that's going to define the models. So I'll just put this stuff here, export that, export the user interface. We need I guess some of the other types as well. For now I think this user data type is fine. In the user data type, when I'm making a post request, I need to send only the email and the password. So only the email and the password are compulsory. Email and so let's just do export interface which has email in string and password in string for this. Username, and I think so bio can be nullable, I guess. Yep, image might be of string data type. So yeah, I got my interface for profile, I got my interface for a user, and I have a user submit interface. So yep, so my user module would have user of type user, and a profile of type profile. Okay, um, I'll just initialize them with null maybe. What we need is to make this API call for the sign in and sign up requests. So I'm gonna make you know a file called API dot d.ts maybe. Um, so API.ts, that's my API file. So I'm gonna use Axios to do this API call stuff. So I'll just do yarn add Axios, which is going to add Axios into my project. And how to use Axios, I think the best place is Axios npm page itself, which tells us how to use Axios. It's a good, there's readme is the only guide that exists. So we can like, one of the things that we can do with Axios is we can do Axios dot create to create a new Axios instance, and then we can add headers into it. We can do Axios dot defaults dot headers, and we can put headers into that. So I'm gonna do is import Axios from Axios, and const export const Conduit API equal to Axios dot create, and I create Axios. I'm gonna pass the base URL as whatever is given here inside the front end requirements. I am supposed to, you know, point the API to conduit.production ready.io/API. So I'll just set this as my base URL, and I'm going to create a couple of functions. I'm going to create a function called export function set JWT, which takes a JWT of type string, and it does is it takes conduit API dot defaults dot common dot authorization equal to token space whatever the value of JWT is. Okay, so I can set up default headers like this, and I can do like a export function clear JWT, which does of course deletes this key. So I can like set the JWT when I get it. I can remove the JWT when I want to. Then let's deal with the API calls. So I'm gonna have to deal with these API calls, which are so user API calls. I need post user slash login. I need registration API slash users for sign up, and let's deal with this first, API slash user slash login. So we'll do so login user. When I login user function I call, I'm gonna pass a user submission of user submit type, and what we're going to do is we make it an async function, and we'll do Axios dot post to this URL, which would be users/login. With in the data, I'm going to pass this user object. So I need to pass like this user object when I'm logging in this format. So I'll just pass this user object into the data, and that's going to return me a response of this type, which so this response is what's this response going to be? It's going to be this user object. So my response is going to be of this type. Or I can create say, I think some data types for the responses as well. So export interface user response contains an user of type user. So my response is going to be of user response type. Okay, so if I get this user response type, I'll just return it. I'll just do return response, or I can do is simply give this return type out here and return on this await statement directly. If there is an error, I just print it to the console for now. So my return type is supposed to be of a promise data type, because async functions are supposed to return promises. So I think the response dot data is where the actual response is. So I just do console const response equal to this, and I'm going to do return response dot data as user response. Yep. So I think that should work. So response dot data contains the data that we have actually received. So this promise might return undefined as well if we hit the error in that case. So I'll just make this promises on user response slash undefined. So we need to call this login user function. So what I'll do is inside my I'll go to first of all let's take a look at the login page inside my app right now. If I open my app, okay, so here's my login page slash login. So let's just change this login page to make it look like the actual login page inside these apps. So sign in, need an account. So my views login.view would be somewhat like this. Sign in. Instead of this href stuff, I'm gonna do this router link to /register, and the router link says need an account. Okay, this error message, we'll see if there is an error or not. I'll just get to that. For now I'm just removing that. This form should contain two fields, email and password. Right now we have an email, your name and password, so I'll remove this your name field from there. So we got the field which is for email, for password, and we have got this submit button. So let me just turn this into a proper Vue component here. So there we go. Now we will add some data members called first of all email equal to empty string, and password equal to an empty string. I'll just add these into my V models up here. So this is my input element. I'm gonna do V model equal to email, and V model equal to password. Okay. Then there's this button. When this button is clicked, I want to call a function, so I'll create a function out here called login. What this login function does is we'll see to that. Let's just write a console.log login with email equal to this dot email, and let's just say I just create this log function right now, and I click on this button. I'll just do this click. Okay. Okay, so if I inspect and go into the Vue DevTools, I'll be seeing that I have this component router view / login here, which contains email and password like this. If I start typing something, the email comes up. Type something here, the password comes up. If I click on sign in, it would show in my console logging in with email. So that's how now we need to actually do the process of logging in. So I'll go and go to my modules. Okay, so we have got this login user function. We have created an asynchronous function inside our API, which takes a user submit object as parameter, and it gets response. In the response, it returns the user object from the response. Now ideally we should do something like a try catch here, and if the response we don't get a correct response, we should show the error or something like that. So we will get to that. We'll get to that eventually. For now, what we're going to do is we will go to the users module, and we will now create a beautiful little thing which exists in Vuex model decorators called mutation actions. So this mutation action, whatever we return here, that you can write mutate equal to something, and it will go and mutate all of those items when we return the response. So I'm going to create a new mutation action inside which I'll write mutate, and I'll mutate the user property. So what I'm going to do is I will create an async function called login, which takes a user submit kind of parameter, and this function idly returns basically. So what we'll do is now do await user login, which I can basically import from the API, login user. So this login user, and inside login user I will pass this user, and what I get from login user is basically a promise of an user object. So const user equal to await login user, and then I will return this object which contains user inside it. Okay. So we use login user, and we get this user object, and we return this user object. So it'll make sure that inside mutate, whatever strings that you're passed, when you're returning, this object should contain exactly those keys. So I'll return this user object, and since it's a mutation action, it will automatically mutate the user object, and it will set it there. Now to run this action from my component, what I need to do is inside my login component, I'm going to do import users from slash store slash modules slash users. Okay, so now if I run this thing on login, if I do users dot, and you see we have got this login function available to us now. So we do users dot login, and inside login I get an object. Inside that object I pass email, this dot email, and password, this dot password. Okay, so this will basically run the users from the modules. So if it runs that, then an API call is going to get made. I'll just check if that happens or not. So let's just run our project. Oh, it's running already. So let's open this login page again, and something did not work, I guess. Okay, so get this error called class constructors must be invoked with new. So we get this error because in Vuex module decorators, you'll find that it's given here like it's my library. So I know that there's like some tips that if you want to target ES5, then you need to write transpile dependencies Vuex module decorators inside your vue.config.js. So I'll do that. I will go to my vue.config.js. I will create one new file, vue.config.js, and I'll do module.exports equal to I'll write transpile dependencies Vuex model decorators. This needs to be transpiled. So let's just serve this thing again. And this time around I'll just refresh this page so to see it starts working. Go to slash login page. Oh, I did not give this the name. I should give it a name. It's called login, I think. Okay, so let's give my email ID and my password. So as soon as I click on sign in, let's check if the network request happens or not. Click on sign in, and so network request did not take place. So unknown action type users slash login. So apparently the users slash login function did not work. Oh, I need to write this needs to be a dynamic module as well. So mutate params not in payload. Okay, so let's take a look at the object that we get in response, console.log user. Okay, so let's clear all that stuff. Go to network requests and let's sign in. Okay, so make a login request. In response, I get my email object actually. My console, you get this user object in response, which has got ID, bio, and all of that stuff created. So turn this into a action instead and create a mutation. Set user set user takes an user object, the this dot user equal to user. Just import mutation from Vuex model decorators. So create an action that commit set user, and we return the user object from here. Okay, we need to import action as well. Okay, so let's see if this works. Slash login, sign in. Let's just check our Vuex state, and yep, the user object exists. So this works. So I can create a mutation, set user, and then an action which commits this set user mutation. So that works for us. Then what need is that when the user is logged in, then I don't want to show the sign up and sign in things up here. Okay, so let's change something in the navbar. We can create a getter here, get username. If user exists, then we send user dot if this dot user exists, then we send this dot user dot username, or else we send null. Okay, this is, we create a getter like this. What we're gonna do is we'll go to the component for app navbar, and I'm gonna import users from @store/users. Get the users module up here. We'll create a computed property here inside my app navbar. Now to create a computed property, we need to create a getter here as well. We do get username, which does is return users dot username. Okay, now what we'll do is we will look at these things. So this is the demo app. Originally there is home, sign in, and sign up, and when we actually sign in, that's the point where we see new article settings in my username. So we've got the home, we have the sign up. So first of all, I'll just change all this into like just change 2 of them. Of course, we don't want a links, we want router links, proper router links. So I'm going to change this into router link. class navlink to register, which says sign up. So do something similar for sign in. It will take me to slash login path. Okay, what I'll do is I'll do a v if username so if a username does not exist, in that case I'll show the register and the login links. That's what I want to do. Okay, now let's just run this again. Error out here. Store slash modules slash users. My bad. Okay, so now you take a look. So see, sign up and sign in exist right now. If I go to my sign in page, and if I go to my sign in page and I actually sign in, and as soon as I sign in, those go away because now a username does exist. Okay, so we are able to like change the state of the navbar based on whether a username exists or not. And I think we should set these things to be similar things, like we should do new post and settings should be available when username exists, otherwise they should not be available. Okay, so if I like refresh the page, they are not available, and when I sign up or sign in, and only after that should those be available. So I can like change the state of the navbar based on whether the user is right now logged in or not from my Vuex modules.